Hi, and welcome to The Sit Down. Joining me is Christy Martinez-Garcia, community leader and publisher of Latino Lubbock Magazine. Christy, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you need no introduction, but of course it's a TV show.
No, I do.
You've been around Lubbock your entire life, native of the area.
I'm native of the area. I did move away for a little while, a couple of times, but you know, Lubbock and that darn magnet that we all know
That's
about.
right. Everyone's got to go out and see what's out there, but then we all come home.
Well, I think it's important to get out and grow and then come and bring back some of that knowledge that you learn.
Yeah, one interesting thing I think from your background is the work you did with La Raza in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
What was that like, and what were some of the lessons you may have, talking about learning something and bringing it back, what were some of the lessons you learned there that still inform what you do today?
Well, I worked for National Council of La Raza, which is now called Unidos. They had a name change, which was a little bit interesting, but it was an amazing experience. I got to work with someone that I admired from a distance, Raul Izaguirre, who was the CEO. And at that time, he unfortunately got Parkinson's disease, and you know, it affected his work life and whatnot. So he stepped down as CEO, and at the same time, they were transitioning a new CEO, Janet Murguia. And that was just, that whole experience of seeing that transition was amazing. And getting to experience two different styles of leadership, but with that commonality of wanting to see or empower Hispanics. So that was wonderful. But just getting to see a national perspective of issues impacting Latinos, I thought that was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. And I loved every minute of it. And, you know, even when the DREAM Act all started, I was there in DC and got to, you know, get to see some individual stories and just, you know, how it was already impacting a lot of the young individuals and whatnot. But I remember being in at a press conference and Lindsey Graham allowing an individual to stay. He granted her a little more time. Dad was from Mexico, and it was just interesting to see that whole process. And I thought that would end, but here we are, 2018, and it's been a while.
Yeah, still having that conversation. And since you brought it up, you know what, this administration has made immigration sort of, they've put their, you know, their foot down on some of these issues. How do you see that, and just being involved in the Latino community here in Lubbock?
Well, for me, as an American, it really concerns me on multiple levels. One is that I am an American, but too often we get generalized. You know,
his opening statement was
exactly.
Mexico's not sending their best here.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. He generalizes, and he makes the assumption that all of us just crossed the border just the other day, and that's just unfair.
Sure.
And you know, as I've been told to go back to my country, and I'm like, well, where would that be other than America? But you know, I sometimes find it a little comical, because I mean, I once got a phone call, and I had an individual just, you know, was having a great day, all of a sudden got this phone call letting me know I should go back to my country for advocating for the Latino community. And it really bothered me. But I remember telling the guy, well, you need to read your history book. And then he started on a religious path, and I'm like, well, you might want to read that Bible too. But unfortunately, that's what has come out of this administration. You know, I want to support because it's our president, but sometimes some of the comments and some of the generalizations and the inequities make it a little bit difficult to take, you know, the politics of this POTUS seriously.
Sure, and how do people in the community, I'm a middle-class white guy, right? I have all this privilege and everything goes my way, and I'm not in any type of danger. How do we help? How do we sort of, be allies with the people who are being sort of targeted by these policies?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I think a lot of us have come to a point where we're either complacent or we don't want to get involved because if you're outspoken, then you're attacked. If you get involved, then, something's wrong. But I think it's important that folks get involved. And part of getting involved is, one, really learning the facts I think that's always so significant in any argument. And then the other part is registering to vote if you're not already registered, and then voting. And I think that's how you can make a difference. And one thing too is it would be easy for me to say that a lot of Hispanics are anti-Trump. That's not the case. And I've learned, being in media, as you well know, we have to wear the objective hat. And so sometimes, I can get personally and emotionally involved in the subject, but I always try to put that, somehow being in media just really changes your perspective. So I don't like his attack on media either, but it is what it is. And so one thing is know the facts, get involved, and don't be afraid to stand up. There's the Paradoxical Commandments of Leadership. It's called Anyway by Dr. Kent M. Keith. It's one of my favorite. When I work with students, I always tell them, read that. If you can learn that, then you're going to be a great leader. And part of it is learning to stick your head out or your neck out for others. And, you're going to get kicked in the teeth, but you do it anyway. And because it's the right thing to do. And, that's the thing, is that we can't be fearful. We have to be fearless.
Absolutely. So speaking of the upcoming elections, we see Beto O'Rourke, we see Miguel Lavario being engaged and running. Is that sort of an optimistic, do you see that as a positive example of Latinos, Hispanics getting involved in politics? I mean, Beto really has created sort of a movement behind him.
Well, and I'll be frank, Dr. Miguel Lavario has done an outstanding job of connecting with so many different circles of people. He's connected with Latino Lubbock Magazine and other mainstream media. But unfortunately, Beto O'Rourke needs to not be complacent and not, I hate for Hispanics to be the political piñata. This is a relationship that he needs to foster, his folks need to foster, those that are on the ground and working on his behalf. Don't overlook Hispanic and Black media or ethnic media. And I feel like for us, I'm speaking as a newspaper publisher, that has happened. We don't get the press releases. So, I have 100,000 readers a month with Latino Lubbock Magazine. And I think that you cannot overlook at this point when polls are close and, you've got to attract these potential voters, but you cannot not be, you got to think outside the box and not leave any stone unturned.
Being in Texas for most of your life, there's talk of a blue wave that's coming, and there's also talk of that Texas is this close to going from a staunch Republican state to possibly a Democrat state, and a lot of that is said because of the Hispanic population.
Yeah,
do you feel that's true?
No doubt. The fastest, youngest growing population, and one that is becoming very politically involved, educated. I see a growing wealth, so it's all on the up. What I also see is that, there's still work to be done. And, with the Hispanic community, just to give an example, in my household, and a lot of the folks know this about my household, my husband was raised in the country. I'm a city girl. He was raised Southern Baptist. I'm a Catholic. He was raised a Republican. I was raised by a Republican and a Democrat, so technically I'm an independent. And so,
by birth,
so, it's just, that's what I'm seeing a lot of nowadays too, is that you have different, just little varieties happening in households, but I do believe that it's really going into that direction. And it's, only time will tell.
Another sort of criticism that we've seen is that in 2016, that during the presidential election, that the Hispanic community, the African American community, the minority communities of this country are sort of seen as these large monolithic voting blocks. And that's not just one party, it's both, but politics in general. Since 2016, have you seen any of that change?
Well, the thing is that I'm concerned sometimes that the parties are not really understanding or really connecting with the with the Hispanic community, but
It's surface level.
right. And it has to be an ongoing relationship, not just, like I mentioned earlier, we don't want to be your political piñata. This needs to be a relationship that, as we are growing in numbers, we need to also be assuming the roles. I mean, Dr. Stephen Murdoch, who was the planner for the state of Texas, said, if you're not connecting with the Hispanic community, then you are going to get left behind. And during a meeting, a lunch that I attended, there was one of the congressional candidates, and I asked him what he was doing to connect with the Hispanic community, because, like I said, we need to be hearing from these folks. And he said, well, Hispanics don't vote. And I was disgusted with his comment because, I mean, it's not just Hispanics that aren't voting. The general public, people that are registered to vote, are not coming out to vote. I think the number of people that come out to vote are 14%, but the Hispanic numbers are growing in voter participation and voter turnout. And to make such a generalization and an ignorant comment like that, I can tell you that I won't be voting for that individual, but I think if people understood that we're not just that political piñata, we want to be validated, we want to be recognized as taxpayers and not just a tax burden. We want to be seen as citizens and not the immigrants, because if you want to really understand us, I mean, to know us is to connect with us.
So that sort of connects to media in a way. A lot of these narratives have not only been driven by politicians, but then also the media picking up these storylines and running with them. What is Latino Lubbock Magazine's role and all media's role in helping tell those stories or to navigate this sort of complex time that we're living in?
Well, Latino Lubbock Magazine is Lubbock news from a Latino perspective. And I think our timing of when we started, we're now 12 years old, and it's a significant publication. As I mentioned, we're 100,000 readers strong. We're located in Lubbock in 28 rural communities. So some of these towns, they're getting to see, our style and the content that we share with them. But now, because as all print media, we're having to move also into the digital age, which is wonderful because it's another great tool for us. And we're just trying to do everything that we can to connect and offer this perspective. And unfortunately, you don't always see Hispanics in, getting to be interviewed or getting their perspective. And it's disappointing, but this publication allows us to do that. And all of the other, our social media and whatnot, allows us also to have that opportunity to connect with these individuals. And I think folks appreciate it. And I think there's a hunger for it. The other thing is that more than 57% of Hispanics prefer printed material first for their news source. And then they start looking for everything else. So I think that's really significant. And just to give you an idea, the average age of our reader is 38 years old. I think that's pretty cool, because we're kind of in the middle. You've got your English readers, your Spanish readers, your bilingual readers. We've got it all. And ages that range from children to senior citizens, women and men. So we're making a lot of headway, and I think it needs to be taken seriously.
In what ways are you adapting and evolving into the digital space?
Well, of course, we use as many social media platforms as possible. I think that's really important. You'll find us on Facebook and Instagram, and we have our wonderful interns, and of course I get on there. We've got our website. We're constantly doing things. We're in the process of creating a podcast to also give us that opportunity to meet with individuals and share what they have going on and whatnot, and really create a dialogue.
Another space where I feel like you talked about seeing Hispanics and Latinos being interviewed. What about the people doing the interviews? I know that obviously Latino Lubbock Magazine has part of that mission is training young Hispanic journalists.
Absolutely.
Talk about that. How important is that, and what does that look like?
Well, we're members of two different national Hispanic journalists organizations and Hispanic publications organizations, and I think that's very significant because we're connecting to them. And then when opportunities also come for internships, we're sharing it, but we're also utilizing our own students and giving them opportunities when there's training and whatnot. And I think it's very important that we get them and that they get to experience this style of journalism. And you know, we're a tabloid style publication, so it comes out once a month. I wish it was more, but we're 32 pages and it's full of content. And that's why, you know, it's so important for them to get that writing experience. But when they come into my office, they soon learn. I have a new intern. She can tell you that is true. But I want to expose them and let them experience that cross-marketing and learning how to do everything, so that when they go into these newsrooms, no matter if it's print or into a TV station or whatnot, they're going to learn how to do everything. And I think that's really critical to see those Hispanic future journalists. It's very, very important.
How does that help? How does that help national publications? How does that help larger publications or media organizations to have diverse voices, to bring in Hispanic journalists and Latino journalists into the fold? What does that do for an organization?
I think it's so critical for an organization to have that diversity because of the growth happening in our populations, you know. And you get different experiences, you know, and I think that's so significant. I was raised with, you know, that combination family, and political season was always interesting, but then also faith was very significant. I was raised with a very fervent work ethic. I mean, my dad was working all day and going to college at night. I think that's pretty significant. My mom followed not too shortly thereafter. But I mean, there's just so much that we can bring to the table. Unfortunately, there's no always a seat at the table for us, and that's the disappointment.
It's Hispanic Heritage Month, and one amazing historical story you've told me about. We made a documentary together several years ago, and in the making of that, you sort of said, hey, here's a story that you should look at talking about. It's something that's in your heart. It's the story of the migrant labor camps.
Yes.
In this region. Can you tell a little bit of that history and what that story is?
Well, first, it was such a humbling experience for me to do that research and share it. We now have a state historical marker in Aztlán Park, and it's probably the only marker of its kind in the nation. And at one time, Lubbock, you know, as you know, it's referred to as King Cotton, but the migrant worker was very significant to making that happen. At every entry into Lubbock, there was a migrant labor camp. And of course, one of the biggest being in Aztlán Park. And what stirred my interest is one day I came across this article about these migrant children dying in 1940 here in Lubbock. And it was during a season where we had a lot of rain. It was very cold. They called it black rain. It was really, really a very tough time for a lot of the families that all they had were these little tents, or they'd use their cars. They'd have these tarps that they would connect to mesquite trees, and they were living out of their vehicles and farming. There were no social programs for them. Farmers weren't providing any type of housing or anything. So unfortunately, a lot of children got sick. They died. They were buried in some of those camps. And sadly, I mean, if you look into like the Lubbock cemetery, they have that type of history as well. And these children were just buried where they could. But I think it just stirred something in me, because I thought, man, here's these people not being appreciated and valued for their contribution to this history and to these farms that have become legacies for some families, and their legacy needed to be shared. And so I started doing the research for the migrant labor camps, and you know, it was just amazing, and the story just kept unfolding, the information. And it was one of the best things for me. I submitted it, and I don't remember the year. It's awful, but I've slept since then. But I knew my deadline was November, and I literally put that thing together in less than a month. I had to work really hard, and I submitted it. And by the luck of the draw, Dr. Andres Tejerina was on the Texas Historical Commission. He was on this committee, and their job was to make sure that all of these stories and all this research was valid. And, they said it would take about a year, maybe 2. Because of him knowing that history and really just that, he had done the history of Mexican Americans in Lubbock County up to 1970. And it kind of connected with him as well, because I even cited a lot of his work. So as a result, it was kind of pushed a little bit further, and they moved on it quick. So by the next year, in January, they approved our historical marker. And, people don't always see the significance of that or the migrant laborers, but I still will never forget that ceremony. We had it at Otzlan Park, and it was such a great day. I mean, Monsignor Curtis Hoffman, who got to do some work with the Braceros, he was there to do the prayer. An individual that had encouraged me to do the state marker, Julia Ramones, she had done one for the Lubbock Cemetery. She was there. And just all these individuals from Barrio del Hueso, or the area that's in the St. Joseph's neighborhood, it's the Guadalupe neighborhood. We had several folks out, and it really was significant because they were getting to share their stories and just hear the contributions that were made by their families. And I think that was so significant, and it still is. And so now, I've kind of tracked an area that shows, okay, this happened here and this happened there. And, I've been able to work on a lot of stuff, and I'm preparing a next historical marker. I've started the history of St. Joseph's Catholic Church, which is the first Catholic church in Lubbock, Texas. And, too often that gets disregarded, but it was also, they called it the Mexican church in Mexican Town, or the Chihuahua district. So I'm excited to share that, and hopefully by its millennial, we'll have that ready and out for the public to enjoy.
We're already running out of time, which conversations with us always seem to go by really fast. Are there some events happening this month that you want to share with the audience?
Well, we've got a lot of different things. Of course, one thing that I want to encourage is that folks visit our website, latinolubbock.net, and go to the events page. You'll see just a lot of listings. There's too many to tell, but the other thing is we're getting ready for our Day of the Dead celebration, which will be in November. And then we've got a parade that one of the organizations, Fiestas del Llano Inc., is going to be hosting, the Hispanic Roundtable, which is something new. And it has meetings the first Monday of each month. This particular month, because of Labor Day, it's actually on September the 10th. And that is, also on the website. And we'll be more than glad to share all that information. But there's really a lot going on. Of course, I started a nonprofit organization now celebrating 10 years, Los Hermanos Familia. It's for families, for men, women, youth, and we are committed to strengthening families and building community. And it's for everybody. But we do, I think it's a very unique organization, and we've really put Lubbock on the map with a fishing event that we hold annually that we did in August called Vamos a Pescar, Let's Go Fishing. It's even been used as a model for a national fishing project. So we're pretty excited about that.
Very busy.
I love it. I love every second of it.
Well, I have a lot of admiration and respect for all the work that you do. You're
Appreciate
an inspiring
that.
Community leader.
And likewise.
Yeah, thank you. Well, nothing compared to what you do. Thank you so much for coming on the show. For more shows and to get more information, go to kttz.org.